Have you ever heard of someone who seemed perfectly fine and suddenly collapsed, with one side of the body paralyzed, a twisted mouth, and slurred speech? Maybe you know someone who suffered a stroke. Maybe you don't even realize you've been close to having one yourself. A stroke, cerebrovascular accident, is like an ambush. It doesn't come with sirens or screaming pain. It arrives in silence. And when you realize it, it may already be too late. But the scariest part isn't that. The scariest part is that many people on their way to a stroke believe they're just tired. Or that the little forgetfulness is due to stress. Or that the tingling in the arm is just because they slept on it. Small signs the body sends, and we ignore them every day. Until it screams. Until the body shuts down. And what almost no one knows is that there are daily habits, seemingly harmless ones, that silently destroy the brain's blood vessels. Too much coffee. Too little rest. Too much fat. Too little water. All of it quietly builds up until the blood stops flowing properly. And the brain begins to die. Yes, the brain literally dies during a stroke. Second by second. Now, you may be wondering, if it's so serious, why doesn't anyone talk about it clearly? The answer is simple. Because it's invisible. Because a stroke doesn't hurt until it happens. And because the real symptoms are easily confused with other things. Dizziness, weakness, forgetfulness. Nothing seems serious. Until it is. In this video, you'll discover how your body is trying to warn you that it's in danger. You'll understand which habits are putting you at risk, and you might be doing all of them without even knowing. We'll also talk about genetic factors, diet, stress, and even a detail that happens every night while you sleep. And that may be the biggest trigger for your stroke. But calm down. This isn't about panic. It's about clarity. Because the truth, no matter how harsh, can save you. And as you listen, you may realize that you'll never see a headache the same way again. Or a sudden fatigue. Or a restless night. Stay until the end, because in the next few minutes you'll hear something many doctors avoid saying outright. Something that might make you rethink choices that seem small, but make all the difference between a healthy future or a life marked by irreversible limitations. Are you ready to hear what no one had the courage to tell you? They call it a brain attack, for a reason. Because that's how it acts. Fast, aggressive, and relentless. But what almost no one understands is that the attack starts long before the body falls. It begins slowly, like a leak that the eye doesn't see, but that one day brings the whole wall down. It all starts with the vessels. The brain's blood vessels are like tiny highways through which blood carries oxygen and nutrients to the cells that control everything you are. Your thoughts, your speech, your movements, your memory. If these roads get blocked or burst, there's no time to call for help. The damage begins in seconds. And what is lost may never come back. But do you know what's even more dangerous? The idea that a stroke only happens to people over 60. That belief, so common, is silently killing young people. Every day. Because strokes no longer have an age. They're affecting people in their 50s, 40s, even 30s. And do you know why? Because modern life has created the perfect environment for it. Hours of sitting without moving. Ultra-processed foods. Chronic stress. Little sleep. High blood pressure that no one checks. Diabetes that many don't even know they have. And maybe the most shocking of all, a huge number of people with high cholesterol and no visible symptoms. They keep living, working, having fun, without knowing they carry a ticking time bomb inside their chest. And the cruelest part is that all of this could be prevented. Science already knows how. Medicine already has the answers. But even so, people keep falling. Becoming paralyzed. Dying. Because they didn't pay attention. Because the signs were there, but they seemed normal. And no one thought that what seemed small was actually the beginning of something huge. And irreversible. Maybe right now you're feeling a slight pressure in the back of your head. Maybe a strange headache. Maybe a few days ago your arm tingled and you thought it was just poor circulation. But what if it's not? What if it's your body screaming for help before the collapse? In this video, we're going to talk about silent symptoms, about signs that appear days, or even weeks, before a stroke, and that you should never ignore. We'll also talk about something that may seem simple, but is directly linked to thousands of stroke cases every year: the way you breathe while you sleep. But that, we'll reveal in just a moment. Have you ever stopped to think about how you sleep? Not where you sleep. Not how many hours. But how. Because while your body rests, your brain keeps working. And what few people know is that the way you breathe at night can be one of the biggest triggers for a stroke. Sleep apnea, for example, is more common than you think. It's a condition where breathing stops for a few seconds, several times during the night, without the person realizing it. The result? The brain is left without oxygen. Repeatedly. And the damage builds up in silence. Blood pressure rises. The heart races. And the brain's blood vessels are under constant stress that, sooner or later, can rupture one of them. And the worst part is that many people with apnea don't even know it. They sleep poorly, wake up tired, have headaches in the morning, and think it's just insomnia or stress. But meanwhile, the brain keeps suffering invisible microaggressions. And each one is like another crack in the glass, one you don't see, until it shatters. But that's only part of the story. Because beyond apnea, there's another threat that's even more ignored: the effect of dehydration on the brain. Did you know the human brain is about 75% water? And that lack of hydration can make your blood slightly thicker, slowing its flow and increasing the risk of clots? Now imagine this. You spend the whole day drinking very little water. Then you sleep poorly. You breathe poorly. And you wake up thinking you're just tired. But in truth, your brain is begging for help, and no one is listening. In this video, you'll learn how the simple habit of not drinking enough water can lead to a silent stroke, and what you can do right now to prevent it. And more, we'll reveal which 2 common breakfast foods may be quietly raising your blood pressure without you even noticing. You'll be shocked by the second one. It's considered healthy, but for someone predisposed to strokes, it can be deadly. But before we reveal them, we need to talk about another hidden enemy. There's something almost everyone consumes daily, without guilt, without fear, without even imagining it might be fueling the risk of a stroke. And that something is salt. We're not talking about the salt you sprinkle on your food when seasoning. We're talking about hidden salt. The kind found in processed foods. In pre-made sauces. In salty crackers. In breakfast cereals that seem innocent. In instant soups. Even in breads that, on their own, carry nearly the entire recommended daily amount of sodium. And what does salt do? It raises blood pressure. And high blood pressure is the biggest silent trigger for strokes in the world. It doesn't warn. It doesn't hurt. It just destroys, slowly, the blood vessels in the brain, until one of them bursts. And when that happens, there's no turning back. Millions of people walk around with elevated blood pressure and don't even know it. Because they feel nothing. Because routine numbs them. Because the body adapts. But the body adapting to dysfunction doesn't mean it's okay. It means it's running out of reserves. Now imagine a lifetime of eating poorly, sleeping badly, skipping checkups, thinking that won't happen to me. Until one day, it does. Did you know many strokes happen in the morning? Right after waking up? That's not a coincidence. The body spends hours lying down, with slower circulation, dehydrated. When you suddenly stand up, blood pressure can fluctuate, and the blood, thicker than it should be, may form a deadly clot. And here we return to the most critical point. No one is teaching this in schools, in the media, or on social media the way they should. Stroke prevention is treated like a footnote, when it should be a top priority. Because there's no pain sadder than the kind that could have been avoided. But the good news is, there is a way to reverse that risk. A simple path, based on small changes. In diet, in routine, in how you treat your body. And one of those changes begins on your plate. Or rather, with 2 items you may have eaten this morning thinking you were making the right choice. And now, we're going to reveal which 2 seemingly harmless foods actually carry enormous risks for your brain. The first food seems harmless. It's present in almost every household, seen as light, natural, healthy. Many people eat it first thing in the morning, believing they're making a good choice. We're talking about industrialized whole wheat bread. Yes, that one. The truth is that many breads sold as whole grain are ultra-processed, full of additives, high in sodium and hidden sugar, a combination that raises blood pressure and causes silent glycemic spikes. And that blood instability, over time, directly affects the brain's blood vessels. So while thinking you're making a healthy choice, you may actually be silently increasing your risk of stroke. But if that one already surprised you, the second food will make you rethink something that millions of people drink every single day: industrialized fruit juice. Many of these juices look natural, come with green labels, pictures of fruit, and promises of vitamins. But a closer look reveals that many of them contain very high levels of fructose, preservatives, and again, lots of sodium. The result? A heavy burden on the liver, pancreas, and blood vessels. Sugar hits the bloodstream fast, causes inflammation, and puts the body in a constant state of alert, which, over time, contributes to plaque buildup in arteries and increases stroke risk. But all of this doesn't happen in a single sip, or with a single slice of bread. The problem is the silent, daily accumulation, combined with lack of rest, chronic stress, and the absence of preventive medical checkups. And that's the real danger. People think a stroke happens out of nowhere. But the truth is, it's built over years, through habits that seem completely normal. And there's a factor that makes all of this even more serious: genetics. Because even if you eat well and try to sleep right, if you carry a family history of stroke in your blood, your body is already predisposed. But that doesn't mean you're doomed. On the contrary, knowing it might just save your life. However, there's one fatal mistake many people make when they find out there are stroke cases in their family. And that mistake, although it may seem like a form of care, actually speeds up the risk. When someone finds out that there are stroke cases in their family, the first reaction is usually the same: fear. And with that fear comes the urge to do everything right. But the problem is that many of these actions are full of misinformation. And one of the most dangerous is self-medication. Yes, because many people start taking medications, just in case, without medical supervision. Daily painkillers. Blood pressure medications without prescription. Even blood thinners that were prescribed to a relative, and are now taken as if they work for everyone. And that's a serious mistake. What works for one person can be toxic for another. And taking medication unnecessarily can mask important symptoms, or even cause new ones. You might lower your blood pressure artificially, but without treating the real cause. Or you might interfere with vital functions and trigger side effects that open the door to new risks. And it's not just self-medication that represents this fatal mistake. It's also the silent denial. That thought of, if it's genetic, it's already written. How many people have you heard say, "My grandfather died of a stroke, my father too. It's just a matter of time"? And by believing that, they give up on trying to protect themselves. They live as if nothing can be done. And so, the risk increases, day by day. But genetics is not destiny. It's just a map. And you still get to choose which road to take. There's a concept called epigenetics, which shows that your habits can literally silence harmful genes and activate protective ones. In other words, even if you have a family history, you can completely avoid a stroke if you change how you live today. And that's exactly what we'll talk about next: the 5 habits that science has already proven to drastically reduce the risk of stroke, even in people with genetic predisposition. But before we reveal the first one, we need to talk about something that almost no one pays attention to, and yet it's present in nearly every modern environment, and it could be making your brain sick without you even knowing. It's something so common that it has become invisible. It's in homes, in offices, on the streets. It's on the screens you're looking at right now, in the lights that turn on automatically, even in the room where you sleep. We're talking about artificial light. It may sound like an exaggeration, but constant exposure to artificial light, especially at night, has a devastating effect on the brain. And as a result, it increases the risk of stroke. How? The answer lies in the sleep hormone, melatonin. Melatonin regulates not only sleep but also blood pressure, heart rhythm, and cellular regeneration. When you expose yourself to white or blue light, like that of a phone or computer, late at night, melatonin production drops dramatically. The result? You sleep poorly, your body doesn't recover, your blood pressure spikes during the night, and your brain becomes vulnerable. Studies show that most strokes occur between 6 and 10 in the morning, right after a night of poor quality, interrupted sleep, bad breathing, and too much light in the bedroom. Sounds like a coincidence? It's not. And it's not just the light that's the problem. It's the racing pace of the mind. It's the habit of going to bed with your phone in hand, scrolling through videos until your brain can't take it anymore. It's the routine of falling asleep with the TV on, with jarring sounds, visual stimuli, hidden anxiety. All of this directly affects the nervous system and keeps the brain on high alert, even when your eyes are closed. And what does this have to do with strokes? Absolutely everything. Because the brain needs a dark, silent, and safe environment to recover. And when that doesn't happen for several nights in a row, the body lives in a constant state of stress. And stress, as you'll see next, is one of the greatest allies of stroke. Often, a stroke is the final scream of a body that has spent years living under pressure. But what you may not know is that there's a type of stress even more dangerous than emotional stress. And sadly, almost no one can avoid it nowadays. And that's what we're going to talk about now. When we talk about stress, most people think of arguments, tight deadlines, unpaid bills, traffic. But the most dangerous kind of stress isn't the one that screams, it's the one that settles in silently. Chronic physiological stress. This kind of stress is like an internal leak. You don't notice it's there, but it's eroding everything. Hormones, immunity, and especially the blood vessels in your brain. It comes from the lack of true pauses. From days that never mentally end. From a life that always feels on alert. It's when you fall asleep thinking about tomorrow's to-do list. You wake up with your phone in your hand. You spend the day sitting, tense, shoulders raised, breathing shallow. And you think that's normal. But while all of that is happening, your body is producing excessive cortisol, a hormone that, in high and constant levels, damages the endothelium, the lining of your blood vessels. Over time, that damage accumulates. Arteries become inflamed. Blood pressure rises. Blood loses its natural flow. You go about your life as usual. Until one day, one of those vessels just can't take it anymore. And it ruptures. Or clogs. And then, the stroke happens. But the cruelest part of all this is that the body gives warnings. Small ones. Subtle ones. But they're there. Palpitations while at rest. Hands always cold. Headaches that seem to come out of nowhere. Trouble concentrating. Insomnia with no explanation. All of these are signs that your body is living in constant defense mode. And your brain is the one paying the highest price. The good news is that the brain is also incredibly adaptable. And there are practices that can literally reverse accumulated stress, lower blood pressure, improve oxygenation, and drastically reduce the risk of stroke. And one of them involves something so simple, so obvious, that many people overlook it. Breathing properly. But we're not talking about inhale and exhale. We're talking about a neurologist-backed technique that can rebalance the nervous system in just a few minutes a day. And the most amazing part? People who use this technique daily reduce their risk of cerebrovascular events by up to 60%. But before I show you how it works, we need to talk about a common mistake that almost everyone makes when breathing. and that, if not corrected, cancels out all the positive effects. Most people think breathing is too automatic to need attention. But what many ignore is that the way you breathe can determine how much oxygen your brain receives. And the most common mistake is breathing with the chest, short, shallow, fast breaths. This type of breathing activates the body's alert system. It makes the heart race, raises blood pressure, and puts the brain into a state of tension. That's what happens when someone is anxious, even if they don't realize it. And it's exactly this breathing pattern that millions of people use all day, especially when they're sitting, tense, staring at a screen. But the body was made to breathe using the diaphragm, deeply, slowly, expanding the abdomen and allowing air to reach the base of the lungs. That's where oxygen really enters efficiently. That's how the brain feels safe, nourished, and balanced. And this is where a simple technique comes in, one that takes less than 5 minutes a day and is already used in stroke rehab clinics and prevention centers. The 4-7-8 breathing technique. Inhale deeply through the nose for a count of 4. Hold the breath in the lungs for a count of 7. Exhale slowly through the mouth for a count of 8. Repeat this cycle 4 times. What does this sequence do? It activates the parasympathetic nervous system, the one responsible for recovery, deep rest, and blood vessel repair. It naturally lowers blood pressure, reduces cortisol, and improves cerebral blood flow. And the best part? It doesn't require medicine, appointments, or a gym. Just silence and willingness. But the most amazing part? This isn't the only thing that works. There are 4 other simple habits, backed by science, that together can shield your brain against strokes. And one of them involves a type of fat that many still avoid, thinking it's harmful, but which might actually be the key to keeping your vessels strong, flexible, and protected. For decades, people were told that all fats were bad, that the right thing to do was to eat as little oil as possible, avoid fatty foods, and stick to everything labeled light, diet, or fat-free. But science has changed. And today, it's well known that there's a type of fat that directly protects the brain from strokes. We're talking about omega-3 fatty acids, found mainly in fish like sardines and salmon, in seeds like flax and chia, and also in unrefined natural oils. This type of fat acts as a vascular anti-inflammatory, reducing plaque buildup, improving blood vessel elasticity, and balancing blood pressure. In other words, while many people are avoiding fat, they're actually avoiding one of the brain's greatest allies. And worse, they replace it with fat-free processed foods that are actually full of sugar, sodium, and additives, all of which increase inflammation, clog arteries, and raise the risk of stroke. But what few people know is that omega-3's protective power only works if another nutrient in your body is also in balance. And that nutrient is so often overlooked that over 80% of the population is deficient in it. Magnesium. Magnesium is responsible for more than 300 reactions in the body, including the contraction and relaxation of blood vessels. It helps regulate blood pressure, heart rhythm, and even mood. When magnesium is lacking, vessels become stiffer, blood flow becomes more difficult, and the risk of clots silently increases. Symptoms of magnesium deficiency include frequent cramps, insomnia, irritability, palpitations, constant headaches. But many people live with all these symptoms without realizing the problem lies in what's missing from their plate, not in some specific disease. And here's the most important detail. Taking omega-3 or magnesium supplements won't help if your daily diet is sabotaging everything. And that happens with 2 ingredients hidden in nearly all processed foods, which, even without you noticing, prevent your brain from absorbing what could truly protect it. These 2 ingredients seem harmless at first glance. They're in the foods you find at the supermarket, even the ones that look healthy. They're in ready-made sauces, packaged juices, fit snacks, breads, cakes, and even products marketed as whole grain. And the worst part, they're even in children's food. We're talking about glucose syrup and monosodium glutamate, MSG. Glucose syrup is a highly processed sugar that causes extreme spikes in blood glucose. This overloads the pancreas, disrupts insulin, and over time, causes silent inflammation in the brain's blood vessels. It's directly linked to plaque buildup in arteries, which can block blood flow to the brain and cause an ischemic stroke. MSG, used as a flavor enhancer, acts directly on the nervous system. Studies have shown that excessive consumption can lead to overstimulation of neurons, resulting in neurotoxicity. In other words, it supercharges the brain artificially, leaving it more vulnerable to inflammation, migraines, nervous dysfunctions, and yes, also to strokes. What's most alarming is that no one warns you about this. There's no label alert. No public campaign. Meanwhile, the body keeps accumulating the effects. And when the brain reacts, with paralysis, loss of speech, sudden weakness, it seems to come out of nowhere. But it doesn't. The good news? You can cleanse the body of these excesses. With time, with awareness, and with real natural foods that truly nourish and regenerate blood vessels. In fact, there's even a powerful food, with a deep purple color, that has already been linked to a significant reduction in stroke risk when consumed regularly. And the most interesting part? It's cheap, easy to find, and you've probably seen it hundreds of times at the store. But maybe you've never taken it seriously. And that's what we're going to talk about next. That intensely colored food that many underestimate is beetroot. Yes, the same beetroot that people often toss into a salad or smoothie without thinking twice. But what few people know is that it contains one of the most powerful natural compounds for brain vessel health: natural nitrates. When you consume beets, these nitrates are converted into nitric oxide in your body. And nitric oxide is a substance that relaxes blood vessels, improves circulation, and lowers blood pressure. In other words, it makes the heart's job easier and allows blood to flow to the brain more efficiently. Exactly what protects against strokes. Studies have shown that daily consumption of beet juice reduced blood pressure in hypertensive adults in just 2 weeks. And even more impressively, in patients with high cardiovascular risk, beetroot improved cerebral vessel function and neural oxygenation. But of course, it doesn't work miracles on its own. No food does. But in a body overwhelmed by stress, hidden salt, processed sugar, poor sleep, and a sedentary lifestyle, even beetroot becomes a natural medicine. The secret lies in the whole picture: in consistency and intelligent combinations. Speaking of combinations, there's another element that, when consumed with beetroot, enhances its absorption and boosts its protective effects on the brain. It's found in a common fruit, often overlooked, yet incredibly powerful: lemon. The citric acid in lemon helps the body better absorb beetroot's nutrients and maintain more alkaline blood, which also supports brain health and reduces vascular inflammation. But this is just the beginning. Because in the next scenes, we'll talk about 3 common daily habits that, even with a healthy diet, still put your brain at risk. And the third one is so routine. You probably did it today without even noticing. You might be eating well, drinking water, sleeping better. But there are everyday habits that many people maintain without realizing they're actually silently increasing their risk of stroke. And the first one seems harmless: spending long hours sitting without standing up. When we sit for extended periods, especially with poor posture and without moving our legs, blood circulation slows, especially in the extremities. This increases the risk of microclots forming, which can travel and reach the brain. Lack of movement also contributes to the accumulation of abdominal fat, another risk factor for hypertension and stroke. The second dangerous habit is neglecting routine medical checkups. Many people only go to the doctor when something feels serious. But stroke, as we've said, doesn't give warning pain. It builds silently. A simple blood pressure check, a blood test for cholesterol and glucose, could be the alert that saves a life. And the third habit, perhaps the most common of all, is suppressing emotions for too long. Bottled up anger, swallowed sadness, unexpressed stress. All of that turns into tension in the body. Muscles tighten. The heart races. Blood pressure rises. And the brain, once again, suffers the consequences. Because the body feels what the mouth doesn't say. And repressed emotions are like pressure cookers with no release valve. At some point they explode. And sometimes, that explosion comes in the form of a stroke. That's why caring for the brain also means caring for emotions. It means learning to listen to yourself, to breathe deeply, to speak when needed, and to understand that stroke is not just a physical issue. It's also an accumulation of everything that was left untreated, inside and out. But maybe the most important point of all is this. What will you do with everything you've heard so far? Because in the next and final part of this journey, you'll understand why some people go through all the risk factors and never have a stroke, while others, even those who try to take care of themselves, are caught off guard. And the difference between them lies in something no medicine in the world can provide. Some people have every risk factor. They sleep poorly, eat badly, live under constant stress. And yet, they go their entire lives without ever having a stroke. Others do everything right. They exercise, take medications, get regular checkups, and still, they're suddenly hit by a stroke. It's confusing, frustrating, and it leads to an uncomfortable question. Why does this happen? The answer, while it may seem simple, is actually deep. Because the body is physical, but it's also energy, emotion, mind, and spirit. And a person's internal state, what they carry, what they feel, what they believe, directly affects their physical state. The body feels everything. Some people, even in chaos, maintain a sense of inner peace that protects them. Others, even surrounded by care, live in constant internal conflict. And the brain, that sensitive, mysterious, powerful organ, responds to all of it. To blood chemistry, yes. But also to unresolved pain. To unspoken grief. To lack of purpose. To absence of faith. That's why more than diet, exercise, or medical exams, true stroke prevention begins with the decision to live more consciously. To not stay silent about what hurts. To care for what goes into the body. And also for what is stored in the heart. Now that you know all of this, the choice is in your hands. Don't wait for the scare. Don't wait for the collapse. Take care of your brain today. Your body. Your story. Change little by little. But change. Because nothing is more precious than a mind that is alive, aware, and free. And no medicine will ever be more powerful than your daily decision to protect yourself. If this video moved you, share it with someone you love. It might be the message that saves a life.